What's going on, everybody? It's AG here. So today we're going to take a look at my updated offseason Big Ten power rankings. Now, I did a way too early list not too long ago at the beginning of the offseason, but some things have changed in the Big Ten. I also did a Big Ten tier list power ranking not too long ago. Go check that out if you're interested. But today we're going to look at my updated offseason power rankings. Join me down in the comment section while we move along. With that being said, let's get started. Arsenal number 18, Purdue. Last season, 4-8. All right, they lost Jeff Brohm to Louisville, obviously, their head coach. And their new head coach, I don't know if it's Waters or Walters, can't remember off the top of my head, kind of inherited a tough situation, but I haven't been super impressed so far. They're probably going to be the bottom dweller of the Big Ten from now going forward until they can figure something out in this new era. But again, I see them being probably last place this year. I don't see too much room for promise. Number 17, UCLA. Probably the biggest dropper for me. They were actually, I think, number 10 when I did my way too early list, but they've had complete roster change since then, staff change. Chip Kelly left, obviously, to go be the offense coordinator at Ohio State. That resulted in a lot of roster turnover, so they lost their quarterback room as well as a lot of the rest of the roster. You've got Foster coming in as the new head coach. Last season went 8-5. With Chip Kelly as the head coach, they were kind of, probably not going to win the conference, but they were in that top 25 argument, every year. But again, with what the roster looks like right now, as well as the question marks at head coach, they're probably not going to be very good this season, especially moving to the Big Ten where it's going to be tougher week in and week out in the conference. Number 16, Northwestern. All right, David Braun, pictured here, did a really good job last year, 8-5 in his first season at Northwestern. Inherited a tough situation. Pat Fitzgerald fired in the offseason. They were winless the year before. But David Braun did a really good job last year. You probably didn't know Northwestern won 8 games unless you're a diehard Big Ten fan. But with that being said, if he can have another year like this or even close to this, 7-6 wins, David Braun will definitely earn my respect for Northwestern, to where they'll kind of always be ranked above this, probably at the worst 13th or so, But David Braun is a name to keep an eye on now as far as going forward. But this roster, though, they lost a ton from last year, and they haven't really done too much in the transfer portal, so I really don't know how they're going to be very good this year. Number 15, Michigan State. Last season, 4-8. Mel Tucker kind of sucked it up towards the end, let's be honest with you here. A lot of turnover on the roster as well here. Jonathan Smith coming over from Oregon State. He did a really good job there. Now, I'm not too inspired by this hire. I don't think it's a very inspired hire. I don't think you're hiring Jonathan Smith to win big championships, but you're probably hiring him to, be in the middle ground. You're going to go 500. You're going to make a bowl game. Will you make a Big Ten championship? Probably not, but you're going to at least be competitive. And I think they will be. I don't know how instantly it's going to happen, but he brings a lot of his roster from Oregon State over with him, so they should at least be improved this year, I think. Our number 14, we've got Illinois. Brett Bielema, last season 5-7. Brett Bielema is always good for like an upset or two during the season. They're never going to be what he was at Wisconsin, but they're at least going to be pretty competitive in the Big Ten. Like I said, they'll upset a team. Probably they'll lose to some teams they shouldn't lose to, but they're going to be right in the middle. Our number 13, Minnesota. PJ Fleck, in my opinion, probably a top 25 coach in the nation. Kind of slept on. Last season 6-7. I know that doesn't sound good, but PJ Fleck, believe it or not, holds the record for the most wins in a season at Minnesota. So that kind of shows you what Minnesota's football expectations probably should be, which is not very high. All right, and PJ Fleck has done a pretty good job there. If they're going 500 at worst, you're doing something right. So he's always, as Minnesota, fairly competitive in the Big Ten. I think that'll happen again this season. Our number 12, Washington, probably the team with the most question marks. Last season, 14-1, made the national championship. You lose your head coach, Kalen DeBoer, to Alabama. You lose a lot of the roster, some to Alabama, some to other places, some to the pros, Michael Penix Jr., Roman Dunze, Dylan Johnson. They're all gone. All right, so this roster is completely overhauled from last season. Jedd Fisch had one good year at Arizona. So how good of a coach is he? We're going to find out pretty soon. Washington was going to have trouble enough moving to the Big Ten, as all these Pac-12 schools will, moving to the from the Pac-12 to the Big Ten is going to be tougher week in and week out. But Washington has had a proven kind of success record here. They've made multiple college football playoffs. So give Jedd Fisch some time here, and I think he'll probably be successful. Now, how much time is he going to have? I don't know, because he might go to Florida next season, but I don't know. I think it's an okay hire, but again, the roster just has a lot of question marks with how much they lost. But they could easily, talking about Washington, bump up, a bunch of spots by the time the season's over. Our number 11, Indiana. Last season 3-9, not very good, but you bring in Curt Cignetti from James Madison as the head coach. He did really good at James Madison. Kind of got them to top 25-ish this past season. He has brought in a lot of talent from the transfer portal, enough talent to where I think this team can compete right away. I know they weren't very good last year, obviously 3-9, but I think Curt Cignetti's done a good enough job with this roster. They can instantly be somewhat competitive in the Big Ten. They might even upset a team or two, but I think they're going to beat everybody below them. Our number 10, Maryland. Last season 8-5. This roster isn't just overly impressive, but Mike Locksley has done a really good job at Maryland. He's almost a shoo-in to win 7 or 8 games every year, no matter what his roster looks like. Now, they lost Talia Tagovailoa at quarterback, obviously, but Locksley does a good job at Maryland, like I said, so they're going to win 7 or 8 wins no matter what, probably. So there's no reason they can't do it again. Our number 9, Nebraska. All right, last season 5-7. Matt Rhule has proven that he can turn around programs, did it pretty quickly at Baylor, got them to a Big 12 championship. So how quickly will he be able to do it in Nebraska? All right, this is kind of the year a lot of people were kind of suspecting is going to be the year, which probably means it'll be next year most likely. But they were pretty close in a lot of games last year. They've improved this roster as well. So how quickly can he get this team towards, the top 5-ish of the Big Ten? I don't know if it'll be this year, but there are a lot of people's sleeper picks. They're not sleeper picks. They're not mine personally, but I think it can definitely be pretty good in the Big Ten. Our number 8, Wisconsin. Last season 7-6. All right, Luke Fickell came over from Cincinnati last season. Not the best first year, but Luke Fickell, you go backtrack a few years, Luke Fickell was kind of the hot name around the country. Like, he was the number one guy on everybody's job board from what he did at Cincinnati. Got them to the college football playoff, only G5 school to ever do that. And he's done really good with this roster in the transfer portal. Brought in Tyler Van Dyke at quarterback for Miami. So with Tyler Van Dyke as well, backtrack a couple years, he was looked at as a first-round NFL draft prospect. He's went through some injury history at Miami, so that's kind of dropped him a little bit. But if he can get even remotely close to that round one potential he had at Miami, Wisconsin's going to be cooking with something. All right, number 7, USC. USC last season 8-5. Lincoln Riley, I think, is a pretty good head coach. I know a lot of people don't like him from, first off, leaving Oklahoma, but second off, hasn't done very well at USC. He has improved this defense in the transfer portal. Now, obviously, they lost the number 1 draft pick, Caleb Williams, so that's going to obviously impact your team a little bit. But Miller Moss, in the playtime he's gotten, has looked pretty good, actually. And if this defense can improve, I think USC can shock some people this year. Our number 6, I'm probably the highest person on Rutgers right now, and I'm not even a Rutgers fan, so don't think I'm a homer or anything. This isn't coming from – I have no ties to Rutgers. I'm pretty impressed with what Greg Schiano's done, built roster-wise this season. Last season, 7-6. All right. They've got Kyle Monninga, however you say his name, at running back. He led the Big Ten in rushing last year. They brought in a really good transfer portal class. And again, this is strictly power ranking, so this isn't projections or predictions. Because if I was doing projection or predictions, Rutgers would actually be in my top 3 or 4. Because go look at their roster, not their roster, go look at their schedule after you're done watching this. There's no reason Rutgers can't go undefeated and make the Big Ten championship. They don't play any of the teams above them in the regular season. So every team I'm going to name here in a second, Rutgers does not play them. So there's no reason they can't make the Big Ten championship. The toughest games they have are USC and Nebraska. So don't be surprised if Rutgers playing in the Big Ten championship with a chance to make the college football playoff. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I think it's definitely plausible. And that's, like, again, I have no ties to Rutgers whatsoever. I'm just impressed with this roster. I'm a big fan of Kyle Monunga, however you say his name again, at running back, but their schedule is very favorable, to say the least. Number 5, Michigan. Last season, 15-0. I know a lot of people probably have them higher. Sharon Moore did good last year when he got a chance to be the coach. All right, he beat Penn State and Ohio State in 2 of his games as interim head coach. But this roster they have had the last few years has just ran this Big Ten. J.J. McCarthy, Jim Harbaugh, Blake Corum. They lose a ton of other pieces as well. But they've got Donovan Edwards back at running back. I think he is in some aspects better than Blake Corum. They have probably the best defensive line in the nation coming back. Their biggest question mark is at quarterback. All right, Alex Orji, we saw him kind of in some Wildcat packages last year, but we've never seen him really throw as the quarterback. So if he can hit as quarterback, Michigan could easily move up in these rankings and make the not necessarily the Big Ten championship, but make the college football playoff. They do play Texas in the non-con, so we're going to find a lot about them early, just what they're made of. And Sharon Moore as well. He did good in spot duty last year as interim head coach. But with the offseason to build your roster that has left to go pro, how are you going to do it? How is your team going to look? We're going to find out soon enough. Our number 4, Iowa. All right, last season 10-4. We know their defense is going to be stout, led by Jay Higgins, pictured here. Arguably the best linebacker in the country, best defensive player in the country. The reason I kind of have some optimism for Iowa, all right, yes, they changed their offense coordinator, but that doesn't really mean too much to me because that could end up hurting their defense in the long run if they kind of go more up-tempo. Because this has kind of been a defensive identity team, and sometimes football teams just built like that. Yeah, your offense sucks, but your defense is really good, so they're going to step up. And sometimes even if you have a good defense, if your offense is just going down the field scoring like that, your defense is going to play worse. That's football. It just happens. You got that team identity, and that's how it works. But the reason I have optimism for them, yes, 10-4 last year, double-digit wins. Kirk Ferentz does a really good job there. They've got Cade McNamara at quarterback, former Michigan quarterback. You know him. Lost his job to J.J. McCarthy. He's made a college football playoff before, but he was hurt last year, didn't play at all. Reports are this week he has been cleared, so he's going to play this year. There were questions about would he be ready once the offseason's over. He's ready. He's going to play this year. Iowa's going to be a potential top 25 team, a potential college football playoff team with their schedule. But Iowa, I've got them at number 4 above Michigan, just slightly right now. Our number 3, Oregon. I know a lot of people probably have them at 2 or 1. Last season, 12-2. A lot of roster turnover here, but they have built a really impressive transfer portal class. That defense is stacked. In particular, they bring in Muhammad from Washington. We just talked about them a little earlier. They bring in Evan Stewart, a receiver from Texas A&M. But they're bringing Dylan Gabriel at quarterback from Oklahoma. I think he is probably the Heisman favorite right now. I think he's better than Bo Nix even. But the reason I have on number 3, I do have them making the college football playoff, by the way, so before you blow your load there, don't get too mad. I do have Oregon making the playoff, but I think I have some question marks again about if these Pac-12 schools can come to the Big Ten and do it week in and week out. We're going to find out, but now they have beaten Ohio State in the non-con in the past, so it's not out of the question. But Dan Lanning, I know he gets a lot of love, and I think he is a pretty good coach, but I think anybody can kind of win at Oregon. So we'll see. I think they'll be good. I've got them in my preseason top 10, all that stuff, but I think there's 2 teams better than them. All right, number 2, Penn State. Last season, 10-3. You bring back Drew Aller. That defense is stacked. They have also loaded up in the transfer portal. James Franklin, I know he kind of gets a lot of crap as well, but they are going to benefit the most from college football playoff expansion. Them and the team I'm going to talk about in a second have kind of just been in the chokehold of Michigan these last few years. Like you go back a couple years ago, Penn State was probably the 5th best team in the country. They just couldn't beat Michigan and Ohio State, which both made the playoff. I think this is the year Penn State's finally going to capitalize on not only the playoff expanding, but also Michigan taking a step back roster talent-wise. I think this is the year Penn State takes that step. Our number 1, Ohio State. Last season, 11-2. Almost ended up sneaking in the college football playoff despite Kyle McCord being kind of spotty at quarterback. Now, they have dropped him. They bring in Will Howard from Kansas State. He's been to the Big 12 championship before. Really good dual-threat quarterback. Now, is he better than Kyle McCord? Well, I don't know. We'll see. But what they have brought in transfer-wise, this roster is absolutely stacked. You've got Caleb Downs at safety. You've got Quinshon Judkins coming in at running back. We talked about Will Howard. You've got Treyveon Henderson back at running back, Emeka Egbuka at receiver. And they're going to benefit, like I said, from Michigan taking a step back, I believe. Now, Michigan may not take a step back, but as of right now, I think they're going to. But that's why I have Ohio State at number 1. And they're also my preseason number 1 national-wise. But what did you think of my rankings? What are your rankings? Who would you move up? Who would you move down? Let me know. Comment down below. Make sure to like this video and subscribe.